What started as a budget discussion quickly exploded into a heated confrontation as Bonnie Watson Coleman unleashed an emotional attack on Russell Vought, demanding answers about aid cuts, rising costs, and the human impact of administration policies.
I'll yield 5 minutes to Ms. Watson Coleman of New Jersey.
Thank you. So I was just trying to figure out where could I find a needle large enough to burst the bubble that you guys live in, because you're not living in reality and you're creating a narrative, and just because you say it, you think it's true. And so I've sat up here and I've listened to a whole bunch of explanations that don't in any way, shape, or form relate to reality. I got a couple of questions to ask you, sir. I'm going to start with one that's going to give you a moment to speak, and then I'm going to ask you a series of yes or no's. And when I say yes or no's, I want yes or no's. What would you say right now to the mothers of the kids who died because of your dismantling of U.S. aid? Harvard study says there are more than 100,000 of them. Can you give me a quick response to what you would say to those mothers? Just don't talk to me about the study. Talk to me about what you would say to the mothers of the children who died.
Congresswoman, with great respect, I would just contest that the extent to which institutions that benefit from federal largesse put out studies that say that the world has ended, that the world has not in fact ended.
Well, it's going
we
there.
only cut
If you're not going to answer the
USAID
question,
spending last year to the tune of about $8 billion. There was far more that we could have done, Congresswoman.
Reclaiming my time. If a mother came before you who told you that her child died because she didn't have access to health care or medicine that usually would be available because of the kindness of the United States of America, that you and this administration have eliminated, would you have anything of empathy, compassion, and humanity to say to her? Would you say to her, I am sorry, that was a mistake?
I always have empathy for individuals, including those that get improper and false information from the media that pumps this false and ignorant information out to the American people.
You know, I am so sorry to hearing false, fraud, and abuse from any of my colleagues and even from you. Because if we wanted to eliminate abuse and fraud, we'd eliminate the president of the United States from the office right now and the rest of the sycophants in his administration that are allowing him to do so many illegal things. So here's my yes or no's. This is about your budget, and this is about your priorities. Do you think that it is more important to fight a war of choice with a country that represented no threat to us, rather than supporting cuts to Economic Development Administration, to K-12 programs, to community service block grants, to National Institute of Health, to the TSA, and let me speak something about the TSA. Anytime you wanted to spend money to pay DHS, you could, because this president thinks he's a king and can do what he wants to do. And if he wanted to pay those DHS workers, he could have, because he finds money to do everything else he wants to do. What about the money that goes to homeless assistance programs? That's $393 million, or $60 million for fair housing, or eliminating or cutting Job Corps to the point that it's of no help to getting people on the right direction. And even the money for community development financial institutions. Sir, do you think that those programs which address the quality of life, the opportunity of life, the healthiness of the people in this country, including their access to health care, is less important than fighting a frickin' war across the world that never, ever, ever had to be started? Yes or no is all I want.
It's not a war of choice.
Just say yes or no.
It's not a war of choice.
I don't care what you think it is. I ask you for the yes or no. That's all I want from you.
It is an important national security objective that Iran not.
That is another piece of the bubble that you live in. And that's another part of the information that you all share to create a narrative that has nothing to do with reality. And the people of this country are showing you, location by location, state by state, county by county, and city by city, that they don't believe you all anymore. And let me talk to you a little bit with my 3 minutes or 3 seconds about the cost of living. You keep talking about what you saved here and what you saved there and how you saved this one and how you are more diligent in your savings. Well, the people in this country, they don't feel it with their health care. They don't feel it with the gas they got to put in their cars. They don't feel it when they go to the grocery store. They don't feel it when they try to avoid evictions. They don't feel that you all have stood up to any of your promises, that this is an unfortunately monetizing, lying, corrupt administration.
The
and your
gentlelady's time has
representative.
expired.
I yield my time.
The hearing became intensely emotional the moment Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman took the microphone. From her very first words, it was clear this would not be a routine exchange about budgets and government spending. Coleman accused Russell Vought and the administration of living inside what she called a bubble disconnected from the realities facing ordinary Americans. Her frustration was aimed not only at policy decisions, but at what she viewed as a growing gap between Washington rhetoric and the lived experiences of struggling families both at home and abroad. The atmosphere immediately shifted from procedural debate to outright confrontation. One of the most striking moments came when Coleman asked Vought what he would say to mothers whose children allegedly died because of cuts to U.S. aid programs. Rather than discussing statistics, she demanded a human response, empathy, compassion, or even an acknowledgement of suffering. But Vought pushed back against the premise of the question, disputing studies and arguing that claims about catastrophic global consequences were exaggerated. That answer only intensified the tension. Coleman interpreted his response as cold and detached, and her tone became even sharper as she accused the administration of dismissing the real-world consequences of its policies. As the exchange escalated, Coleman broadened the argument beyond foreign aid. She linked the administration's spending priorities to issues Americans face every day: rising healthcare costs, housing insecurity, food prices, homelessness, and economic instability. Her central argument was that resources were being directed toward military conflict and political priorities while essential domestic programs faced cuts or reduced funding. She repeatedly demanded simple yes or no answers about whether these programs mattered less than what she described as a war of choice. But Vought refused to frame the issue in those terms, insisting national security concerns justified the administration's actions. The clash also revealed a much larger political divide that has become increasingly visible in Washington. On one side are officials defending spending cuts and arguing for tighter control over government programs. On the other are lawmakers who believe those cuts are directly hurting vulnerable people and weakening critical social safety nets. Coleman's remarks reflected broader frustration among critics who feel the administration focuses heavily on messaging about savings and efficiency while everyday Americans continue struggling with inflation, healthcare costs, rent, and economic uncertainty. Her comments about people not feeling the promised benefits of these policies resonated as a direct challenge to the administration's economic narrative. By the end of the hearing, the confrontation had become less about USAID specifically and more about trust, accountability, and competing visions of government responsibility. Coleman's fiery remarks underscored the anger many lawmakers feel about both domestic and international policy priorities. Meanwhile, Vought remained firm in defending the administration's approach, refusing to concede the central accusations leveled against him. The result was one of the most tense exchanges of the hearing, a moment that captured the widening divide in American politics over spending, foreign policy, and the role of government in addressing human suffering.